The night was cold, but inside Station Zero, the air felt oppressive, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Ben adjusted his headset, static crackling in his ears. His shift was monotonous, scanning the same frequencies and logging anomalies. He hated it, but the pay was good, and the solitude suited him, until it didn't. The whispers began in his second week. They were faint, barely perceptible over the static. Just interference, he muttered to himself. But the whispers persisted, growing louder and clearer. At first, they sounded like random words in a language he didn't recognize. Then one night, they converged into a single coherent phrase, "He's coming for you." Ben laughed nervously, trying to dismiss it. It was his mind playing tricks, surely. Yet every night after, the phrase returned, each time spoken with more clarity, more urgency. The room felt darker when the whispers came, as if they drained the light. One evening, the power went out. The hum of the machines died, leaving him in pitch-black silence. He reached for his flashlight, its weak beam casting shadows that seemed to stretch and shift. The power returned, but when his equipment came back online, something was different. The usual static was gone. In its place was a low guttural hum that vibrated through his chest. "You've heard us," a voice growled through the speakers. It was deep and ancient, as though the earth itself had found its voice. "Now we come for you." Ben stumbled back, knocking over his chair. He stared at the radio, its dials spinning on their own, the voice droning on, unintelligible yet deeply unsettling. A sudden tap-tap-tap at the window made him whirl around. Outside, something stood in the snow, a figure, impossibly tall, its limbs elongated and wrong. It had no face, only a pale, featureless surface that somehow seemed to stare directly at him. Panicking, Ben grabbed the radio and called for help. "This is Station Zero. I need assistance. There's something here." Static filled the line, and then came the whispers, louder than ever, laughing. The thing outside began to move, each step slow and deliberate. The tapping on the window grew louder, cracks spreading like spiderwebs across the glass. "Stay calm," Ben whispered to himself, heart pounding. He bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. He pushed and pulled, but it felt as though the entire station was holding him prisoner. Behind him, the window shattered. Freezing air flooded the room, and with it came the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps. He didn't look back. He couldn't. He grabbed his flashlight and the radio and ran. The whispers followed him, no longer confined to the static. They seemed to emanate from the very trees as he plunged into the dark forest. The forest felt endless. The farther he ran, the stranger it became. Trees twisted unnaturally, their branches forming claw-like shapes that reached for him. The ground beneath his feet felt soft and spongy, as though it was no longer earth but something alive. The radio crackled to life again. "Left!" a voice shouted, startling him. It was familiar, achingly so. "Run left." Without thinking, he obeyed, veering just as the pale figure lunged from the shadows, missing him by inches. He didn't stop to question it. The voice guided him through the labyrinth of the forest, each command saving him from unseen dangers. "Who are you?" he gasped into the radio. There was a pause, then the voice softened. "It's me, Ben. It's Sarah." He froze. Sarah was his sister, gone for years after a tragic accident. "This isn't real," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Ben," the voice said, trembling with emotion, "you have to keep moving. It's not safe. Before he could respond, the trees around him groaned and shifted. The pale figure was back, its body distorting as it stepped closer. Its limbs stretched unnaturally, bending at impossible angles. Ben ran, but the forest seemed to close in around him, branches clawing at his clothes, the ground sucking at his feet. Finally, he stumbled upon a cabin. It was decrepit and leaning to one side, but it was shelter. He threw himself inside, slamming the door and barricading it with whatever he could find. For a moment, there was silence. The whispers had stopped. He collapsed onto the floor, shaking with relief. But the relief was short-lived. The radio crackled again. "You brought him to us," Sarah's voice said, now cold and mocking. "Thank you." The door behind him creaked open. Slowly, Ben turned. The last thing he saw was a pale hand reaching for him, its fingers impossibly long, as the whispers erupted into deafening laughter.